Hey guys, Alex here. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I will be sharing with you the deal closing process for brokerage in the Philippines, plus the documents that you will need to prepare. Closing is the last step in the sales process, and it is a very important step. As the broker, you need to make sure that you have everything prepared to ensure a smooth transaction on closing day. There are 5 steps in the deal closing process. Step 1, due diligence. I have a whole vlog dedicated to due diligence, and I'll put the card up so you can watch it. I'll also put it down in the description box so you can click on the video once you're free. But for this video, I will give you a summary as it is the first step to closing. So the purpose of doing due diligence is to make sure that the title is clean and all payments are updated. To do your due diligence, you will need to get the following documents. At the Registry of Deeds or ROD, certified true copy of the title. And then at City Hall, you need to request for a certified true copy of the tax declaration for the building if it's a house and lot, certified true copy of the tax declaration for the lot, certificate of latest and existing, and certificate of no improvement for lot-only listings. And then, of course, tax clearance as well. And then at the Homeowners Association, request for a receipt or clearance or the most updated payments. You'll also need to request for updated receipt of utilities for house and lot or condominium units and 2 valid IDs of the seller, both spouses if married, TIN verification slip and TIN ID. To get a certified true copy of the title and tax declaration, you will need 1 valid ID of the seller as well as an authorization letter allowing you to request for these documents on the seller's behalf. This new policy was implemented just in 2022. Prior to this, you could request for a certified true copy directly without needing to show an authorization letter. As for the fees, so for the title, it depends on how many pages the title contains. So if it is only 2 pages, the fee should be around 400 plus pesos. For titles of properties located inside subdivisions, the deed of restrictions of the subdivision is attached to the title. So usually, the fee for this is around 600 to 700 pesos as there are more pages. For the documents to be requested at City Hall, usually it's about 120 pesos. So you will need roughly 800 to 900 pesos per title to get the certified true copies of everything. City Hall can release the certified true copies within 1 to 2 days. ROD takes about 3 days to release. So basically, you can get all the CTCs in 3 to 4 days. Why is getting a certified true copy important? This is because the CTC of the title from the Registry of Deeds reflects the true status of the property. Sometimes the original title that is with the seller may not be updated. However, the CTC will reflect the current status of the property, whether the title is clean, if it's mortgaged, and if it has any liens or encumbrances. The Registry of Deeds maintains records of ownership for all land and real estate transactions, so you can even trace who the previous owners of the property are. Where is the seller based? So part of due diligence is also to check where the seller is based, as well as their marital status. If the seller is based abroad, then we have 2 options. Option 1, the seller flies home to sign all the closing documents themselves. Option 2, the seller issues an SPA to sell to a representative based in the Philippines to transact on his behalf. So his representative will then be the one to sign all the documents, receive the payment, and turn over the property in behalf of the seller. Another thing to consider is the marital status of the seller. If the seller is married, then both spouses will need to sign the deed of absolute sale. In case one spouse cannot sign, for example, if the husband is an OFW, then the husband should issue an SPA to sell or a special power of attorney to sell, authorizing his wife to transact on his behalf. If based abroad, during the time of executing the SPA, it will need to either be consularized or apostilled. Then you should mail the original SPA to your spouse since that document will be needed for closing. If the seller is married but their spouse has already passed away, then they will need to settle the estate tax first prior to selling their property. If the seller was married but got annulled, check the title whether the property is solely under his or her name or is still under both spouses' names. If it's under both spouses, then the ex-husband or wife will also need to sign the deed of sale as the co-owner of the property. The second step is reservation. Whether the seller is a developer or a private individual, reservation is usually the second step of the buying process. Sometimes, though, reservation can come first if the property has several interested buyers, as sellers usually operate on a first-come, first-served basis, meaning whoever will be the first to give a reservation fee or earnest money deposit will be the one to get the property. The purpose of giving a reservation fee is to lock the deal in while due diligence is still ongoing. Standard reservation term is usually 30 days. However, it can be longer or shorter depending on both parties. It can be as long as 45 or even up to 60 days, depending again on the agreement of both the buyer and the seller. So the reservation fee is non-refundable and deductible from the total contract price. Within the reservation period, the seller can no longer offer the property to other interested buyers. Should the buyer want to reserve the unit, the attorney will then draft a document called a reservation agreement. For the RA, the signatures can be digital, so e-signature is okay, and then the reservation fee can also be paid either via check, direct bank deposit, or online transfer. Most of the time, you don't need to meet in person to do the reservation since everything can be done online. However, if you do prefer to meet in person to reserve, then this can also be arranged. The key to a successful reservation is speed and convenience. If there are a lot of interested buyers, then you will want to lock the property in by giving a reservation fee. So what is the difference between a reservation fee and earnest money deposit? An earnest money deposit is a bigger amount, around 10% of the total contract price, while a reservation fee is a smaller amount, something that the buyer will already have access to. Usually for properties that are between 5 to 10 million pesos, reservation fee is just around 100 to 200,000 pesos. For example, I had a client who was interested in an 8 million property in Alegria, so she's based in Canada at the time, but planned to fly home to buy the property. She had a representative, her cousin, check out the lot. We did due diligence, and then she decided to go ahead and reserve it. So both parties signed the reservation agreement via e-signature, and then the buyer then transferred 200,000 reservation fee directly to the seller's bank account. Then within the month, she flew home, met with the seller to sign the deed of absolute sale and pay the balance. So it was a very smooth transaction. Now the property has already been transferred to her name, and both she and her fiancé are now planning to build their dream home. So again, reservation is vital if you want to lock in the deal, because unless it's reserved, the property you like will still be open to other buyers. The third step is to prepare the closing documents. Once the certified true copies are out and the property is reserved, the next step is to finalize the closing documents. So preparation of the closing documents is the main responsibility of the attorney who will be notarizing the deed of sale. As the broker, though, I will be coordinating with the attorney and the buyer and also the seller to make sure that everything is in place. Since it is usually the buyer who pays for the notarial fee, then it is also the buyer who can choose or who will be hiring the attorney to notarize the closing documents. As the broker, it is my main responsibility to provide the attorney with all the necessary documents so he or she can make the closing documents. Closing documents to prepare are contract to sell, so this is for installment purchase or for purchase via bank financing, and then also the deed of absolute sale, acknowledgement receipts of the reservation fee and the full payment, 2 valid IDs of both the seller and the buyer, SPA to sell if in case the seller is based abroad. It needs to be consularized. If seller was in the Philippines during time of executing the SPA, then it can be notarized. SPA to buy if the buyer also is based abroad or is not present during signing, and verified TIN. So quick tip for new agents, be sure to verify the TIN of both the buyer and the seller to make sure that there won't be any snags in the title transfer process. And the next is we have payment. So the buyer will also need to prepare the payment in the form of manager's check, which is good as cash. TIN stands for Tax Identification Number. It's a unique set of numbers assigned to each registered taxpayer in the Philippines, and then you will need this every time you have a transaction with BIR. This is why your TIN is needed every time you buy or sell property in the Philippines. Each Filipino can only have one TIN, so it's important to keep a record of your TIN. Foreigners can also get a TIN for the purpose of buying property. So one time, I wasn't able to verify the seller's TIN in advance, and when the documents were submitted to BIR for the title transfer, we found out that the seller's name in BIR's records got misspelled. Now, this problem can be solved, but it took a lot of time to do so because my client had applied for her TIN in Manila and it had to be changed there. So the title transfer got delayed. But thankfully, it's all good now. So lesson learned, verify the TIN in advance. That's why now, whenever I close deals, I make sure to get the TIN of both parties verified. In this step, once all documents have been prepared by the attorney, then I send it to my clients so they can check. It's critical to get all the data right, all the information correct, such as the title number, spelling of the names. We can't have any errors in the deed of sale because corrections are not allowed. And then the fourth step is to set a closing schedule. So once due diligence has been completed, all documents have been approved by both parties, then we can schedule a closing date. There are 3 parties that the broker needs to coordinate with for closing: the buyer, the seller, and the attorney. If the buyer has a preferred processor who will transfer the title for him or her, then I also ask the processor to be present during closing so we can immediately turn over the documents needed for transfer. If you don't have a processor yet, then I can also recommend someone who can do it for you. The last and final step is finally to close the deal. We usually do it at the attorney's office or the bank. This final step, all the documents are now ready for signing. So documents to bring for closing. For the attorney, you will need to print out contract to sell if applicable, and deed of absolute sale. So you'll usually need between 5 to 6 copies of these documents and the acknowledgement receipt for the payment. For the buyer naman, the buyer will need to bring manager's check, which is good as cash, since once it is issued, it's already debited against the owner's bank account. So MC is more preferable than cash for 2 reasons. First, it is safe, so the seller wouldn't have to go around carrying a bag of cash. And second, it is convenient. You can deposit it at your convenient time, and unlike cash, you wouldn't need to have it counted at the bank, because even if they have a machine for counting cash, it will usually take like 3 to 5 hours to do it. So a transaction that should only be an hour long can take half a day, sometimes the entire day, because of the cash counting. And then, of course, next is the SPA to buy, if applicable, for the buyer, and also SPA to sell, if applicable, for the seller. Now for the sellers, you will need to bring an SPA to sell, if applicable, original title. For the broker, certified true copy of the title, certified true copy of the tax declaration for the building if it's a house and lot, certified true copy of the tax declaration for lot, certificate of latest and existing, certificate of no improvement for lots only, tax clearance, homeowners association clearance or receipt, updated receipt of utilities for house and lot or condo units, TIN verification slip of both buyer and seller, and acknowledgement receipt for all the documents that will be turned over to the buyer. So during closing, the attorney will recheck all the documents, especially the SPA to sell and the original title, and facilitate the signing of the deed of absolute sale or the contract to sell. Once all documents are signed, the attorney will then notarize them and give 1 copy each to the buyer and seller. So seller gets the manager's check and the buyer gets the original title and all the other documents. If the buyer hired a processor for the title transfer, then the processor will also get a notarized copy of the deed of sale and the certified true copies of the property, so he or she can start with the title transfer process. I then scan all the notarized documents, so I have a soft copy of everything, but I usually don't keep any hard copies because all of the hard copies will be given to the buyer, seller, and processor. And that's it for today's deal closing process. Again, there are 5 steps to closing a brokerage deal. We have due diligence, reservation, prepare the closing documents, set date for closing, and then finally, 5th step is to close. I hope you learned something new today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel to be updated of my latest vlogs. See you in my next vlog.